Awaken to love.
This is Awaken to Love, coming to you on location on Mount Shasta, California, right in the middle of the Shasta Trinity National Forest. The peak of the mountain is just over yonder, and I've been out here on the West Coast now for about 3 weeks. This is just a bit past the turnaround point of my tour. The last time I checked in on the podcast, I was just beginning. I recorded my last episode the night before leaving for the tour, and it was released about a week later when I was in North Carolina. So, little updates from the tour. It started in Florida. I've been driving the whole time in my Honda CR-V. These are my new tour shades. I think they're some of the most ridiculous shades I've ever seen. Quite outlandish. And I'm kind of rocking it. I'm kind of rolling with these shades. Look, they only have one arm. Interesting design. Anyway, yeah, the tour. The tour is rolling along. I began in Florida. My first show was canceled, as I mentioned in the last episode. It was canceled because of a frog that got in my car and made me get a flat tire. So yeah, I had to miss out on my first show, and I'm still hoping to get back into that venue. Panacea Brewing in North Carolina. They've got kombucha on tap. But I made it to my first show on tour. That was in Weaverville, North Carolina. I played at Vintage Kava. And so that was the official first out-of-state show on the tour. After Weaverville, I went to the Infinite Elements Festival in Tennessee. And I don't even think I captured any footage from that, but if I can find some, I'll include it. That was quite a cool festival. It was taking place in Jamestown, Tennessee, on some very beautiful land with waterfalls and caves, mountainous land. Wow, that was really something. My show at the Infinite Festival, Infinite Elements, was at 2 a.m. Down yonder near the waterfall, and I had a few friends, guests performing with me, and there was people with cell phones up, but I haven't seen any footage from that yet. But that was a cool show because I had Noah Proudfoot, one of my previous guests on the podcast. He was sitting in on the guitar, and that was actually the same exact location where I met Noah Proudfoot for the very first time. About 3 years ago now. He was performing like a very similar time slot, Sunday night, really late at night, and it became like this jam session that me and him and Benji Bliss and Hyperbolic Headspace, we just made a jam session out of this time slot at the festival. And so it's kind of cool that this year I was booked for the very same time slot and was able to invite Noah. After the Infinite Elements Festival, I made a little waylay out to Clarksville, Tennessee, just to stay at a friend's house over there and check out the scene. And I went to a really cool open mic over at the Rebel Lounge, which is right next to a kava bar. So that was a really cool night where I was like drinking some kava. I would go next door to the alcohol bar where I was not drinking any alcohol. I do prefer kava. But it's cool that these two businesses are like side by side and they can share clientele, and you can kind of bounce back and forth and catch the music over there, catch the kava vibes over there. Very neat. And I met some really good new friends there. So, yeah, the whole tour has been an experience of meeting new friends, connecting with beautiful souls, sharing music, sharing light, sharing the love of Jesus. You guys know me. Praise him. Yeah, I'm still reading my Bible every day, except for the days when I might forget. I'm only human, not perfect, but I've also opened up to like audiobook versions of the Bible, so sometimes I'll just have it playing while I'm driving or even while I'm getting ready for bed. Sometimes it's nice to hear the voice of someone else reading aloud verses of the scripture. Either way, I'm doing my best to walk the righteous path that has been laid out for us in the Bible. That's just where I'm at. And I'm not saying that you have to do it too, but I am saying that there's a lot of value in reading into what the Bible says. I like to compare different versions and see what the differences are. But I'm pretty down with the King James right now, even though it's got that old school, old English writing style with those these and thous and ye, hast, hath, spake, all these words that we've kind of like stopped using in the English language. It's kind of cool just to read old versions of the English language. So yeah, I'm out here on Mount Shasta, and I have some like moss samples that I've found. Look at these! Look at this beautiful neon green moss. This lime green moss that seems to only grow around this part. Uh, just for comparison, this is some moss that I found in Oregon. Very different color, different texture. This stuff is a little more stiff. This Shasta moss, it's so green. And then just today, I found this very interesting specimen of this neon green moss, and it has like all these little like suckers that are opening up, almost like little Venus flytraps. I've never seen moss behave like this before. So yeah, we've got some interesting moss around these parts, and Mount Shasta is a very interesting town. I've really learned to love it. Um, yeah, one of my favorite things about this town is the Headwater Spring right downtown in the city park of Mount Shasta. The Headwater Spring is the headwater of the Sacramento River, and this water is coming right out of the mountain. And everybody in town just brings their jugs up to the headwater and they fill up their jugs and they drink straight from the Headwater Spring. What a beautiful, amazing resource to have in a town. Um, I love springs, and in Florida we have so many beautiful freshwater springs, but the vast majority of them are like in the northern half of the state. So, growing up in South Florida, I really didn't get much of a taste for the springs until I was an adult and started traveling more on my own. So, yeah, I mean, in Fort Pierce, Florida, which is where I've been living for the past few years, there's no spring water nearby. We just have to drink the city water or buy bottled water or filter the city water. We do our best, and grateful to have water that is as clean as we have here in this society, of infrastructure and filtration. But just imagine living in a town where there's fresh, beautiful, hydrating, life giving spring water right downtown, and it's preserved and protected, and everybody cherishes it and reveres it as a sacred source of life. Yeah, I went down to the headwaters. I started singing to the water and singing to God, and came up with a new song. And maybe I'll share that soon. I don't think I'm ready to do it today, but I did play it for my last show, which was in Seattle.
Spring of the living water, to you I sing. I'm singing your praises, Jesus Christ my King. I'll never be thirsty as long as I drink from the spring of the living water. So I sing. So I sing.
And yeah, so I drove all the way out from Florida. I went to Vermont for the Ohm Festival. I drove out to Shasta from Vermont, drove up to Seattle, and that was the turnaround point. Now I'm on the southward slope, gradually, slowly making my way back home. Um, yeah, I'm kind of a driver. When I travel, driving is usually the way that I get to places. It's slower than flying. I've only flown on planes like a handful of times in my life, and I've traveled so much by car, and it does it does take some time. It can take some out of you, but my favorite thing about driving with my own car is that everywhere I go, I still have my car with me. I don't have to rent a car wherever I go. There's a certain amount of freedom that comes and independence with like bringing my own vehicle. It's comfortable, it's familiar, and it's a good tool to have, having my car with me. I can bring as much of my equipment as I can fit in the car. Whereas if I was to fly, I would really have to streamline my things, and I would have to check, some of these items and stuff like that, or like buy a new seat for my instrument, as some people do. There's so many things about flying that I don't know, that kind of like it just seems more hassle than what I would like to deal with. Not to mention, like, during the COVID times, flying became like this whole thing where they're checking vaccines, and they want to make sure you're wearing a mask. And even before that, with like 9/11, which I was like 14 years old when 9/11 happened back in 2001. After that, there was just like an uptick in security measures, and so they were all, ever since then, they've been like checking to make sure you don't have a bomb in your suitcase, and yada yada yada. Even like water, you can't have like a unsealed bottle of water, because I don't know why the reasons are, but for all these complications and people breathing down your neck with airplane flights, I just don't really deal with it. Instead, I drive around, and it takes a long time. But that's my role. So it's serving me well so far, and I got my CRV right there, keeping me company. I'm drinking some of this beautiful Mount Shasta Headwater spring water right now. Life is good. Yeah. Yeah. So from Vermont to Mount Shasta, there was like 45 hours of driving or something like that, and I covered that distance in like 3 days straight. So that was quite the haul. And I did it just because my schedule demanded it, because of the events that I had been booked for. I would have much preferred to have. I would have preferred to just take my time and make more of a crawl of a drive. I would have liked to have taken like at least a week or more, and like stop in different places and see more friends, and like, I don't know, open mic nights, and just book more shows on the westward journey. But the way it was, I had about 3 days in between from the Ohm Festival to the Mount Shasta Lionsgate retreat that I was booked for. And the retreat, they really wanted me there for the first day. So I acquiesced. I made it happen. And on that drive, all I did was drive from rest area to rest area. And I slept in my car in these rest areas, basically like a few hours each night, and then got back on the road and kept driving. And some of those drives were pretty uneventful. There was a lot of cornfields and some flatlands, and all that is beautiful too. I passed by a cattle farm that smelled really bad, and it reminds me why I don't care to eat meat from factory farms. Um, and then I got into Wyoming, and there was some beautiful scenery with like some small, some small cliffs and things like that, some buttes or whatever you might call them. And then I got into Utah and Nevada, and finally, I crossed into California. And the first town I stopped in California was Susanville, and it was so smoky. I've always heard about the wildfires on the West Coast, and lo and behold, now I finally saw them for myself. I didn't see any actual fire, but I saw the smoke from the fires, and the town of Susanville was just covered in smoke. It was thick in the air, And even still, I decided to go on my rollerblades and just skate around downtown. I went to the Susan River, which is, I guess, the namesake of the town. And I probably shouldn't have been like out skating like in the smoky air, but I kind of told myself, like I don't usually have to deal with this stuff. These people live here all the time, and they're making do. So I'm just gonna endure some smoky air and explore this town a little bit. Beautiful small town in northeastern California. After Susanville, I was moving through the Lassen National Forest, and that's when I started to feel the change of scenery. I'm like, okay, now I'm somewhere I've never been before. I got out of my car. I smelled the air. It smelled so good and sweet and woody and just rich. And there's just something about that smell in the Lassen National Forest that I'll never forget the way it felt, just like this moment where I was realizing that I had taken myself, with my own two hands and feet. I had commandeered my vehicle and I had put myself to the test, put the pedal to the metal, and took myself to a brand new place I've never been. And I could really feel the sense of adventure underway. The next day, I woke up in Mount Shasta, and the retreat began that day, but the first thing that I woke up to was realizing how dry the air is, or was. Today it's pretty nice, actually. The air is not as dry as what I've been dealing with, but yeah, for that first week, man, the dry climate was really doing a number on like my sinuses. My nose felt so dried out, and every time I was blowing my nose, there was like little bits of blood coming out. Day after day for actually, like, today is like maybe the first day I haven't seen any blood coming out of my nose when I blew my nose. So yeah, I think that's really mostly because I am acclimated to Florida where it's humid, and so my body wasn't used to enduring like this dry climate. Could also be from the smoke in the air, even though Mount Shasta has been relatively clear of the smoke. The wind has spared us the worst of the smoky conditions. Yeah, so I did the retreat in Mount Shasta, Lionsgate retreat. I was hired by my dear friend Rainbow Fire to support her musically, and that the concert was a total success. I met a lot of cool folks during the retreat, especially my dear friends Mitchell and Alyssa, who perform as Living in Love. And we are getting ready to do some recording this week now that I'm back in Mount Shasta. When I met those folks, I just instantly got like a huge friend crush, and I love their music. I love their energy when they collaborate, and yeah, I've been really giving them a lot of like moral support, encouraging them to sing their songs. And so I'm gonna share with one of their songs with you right now. I took this video of my friends living in love.
Shining so bright is the starlight glowing within you, guiding with a rainbow hue. I know it's love, and I see it flowing through your eyes. shining so bright is the same light glowing within me, sharing electricity. I know it's love, and I feel it flowing through my heart. So where do we start? All that I am and all that I'm asking for is love, is love, is love, is love, is love. And all that we need to succeed is love, is love, is love, is love, is love.
Now that I know what it takes to live a life that is whole, I give my heart and my soul, shining love everywhere that I go. Filling up my heart just to give this love right back to you. There's nothing I would rather do than spend this life giving back to the world. And what does it need?
All that I am, all that I'm asking for is love, is love, is love, is love, is love. And all that we need to succeed is love, is love, is love, is love, is love. Is love, is love, is love, is love, is love. Is love, is love, is love, is love, is love.
Yeah, so meeting those folks were probably my favorite part of the retreat and the Mount Shasta visit. All in all, I'm grateful for the experience. I saw some beautiful sights. Went to Hedge Creek Falls. I went to Panther Spring, which is up in Panther Meadows, and people say that that spring is like the most pure spring in all of Mount Shasta because it's the one that's highest up, highest elevation. And man, I went to the spring head at Panther. I had a moment all by myself with no one else around, and I tasted the water. And between you and me, I even got in the water. I dunked myself in that pool of spring water just for like a second, just enough to get my whole body wet. It was so cold. I love doing cold plunges. Growing up in Florida where the water's so warm, especially in the summertime, it's like almost bath water. I love that warm ocean water because it's so relaxing. But I also have learned as an adult to appreciate cold plunge water because it resets the nervous system. It's good for immunity. It's just good. It's real good. After I get in the cold water and then adjust to that and I get out and dry off, now I feel like I can withstand colder temperatures in the air. It's a little bit chilly today. That's where I'm wearing my winter coat. Everybody tells me I look like an Eskimo when I wear this, but I don't care. I like to stay warm. Anyway, after the retreat, I performed at Dow House, which is an amazing community room in Mount Shasta, facilitated by a guy named Hamid, which is he's just such a beautiful soul. They've got open mic twice a month, and the open mic is so vibrantly attended and supported by so many creative people and really enthusiastic support from the community. So I actually went to the open mic first. I played just one song and like introduced myself to the community and advertised for my show that was coming up there. And I felt so well received. Beautiful times at Dow House. And a few days later I had my show at Dow House. And for this show, my parents were supposed to be there because they had planned to fly in and meet me in Mount Shasta, and then we were going to do a road trip up the West Coast from there. Well, they still flew in, but their flight had to be rescheduled because of the hurricane that was taking place in Florida. So my parents missed the show in Mount Shasta, mom and stepdad, and they flew in a few days later out of San Francisco, and we spent some time outside of San Francisco in Pittsburgh, California, with my new aunt Elena. And so this was the beginning of like the family road trip portion of my musical tour, where I began it solo, and then my mom and Stanley flew out to see me, and we did some family vacay time together. And I met my aunt Elena for the very first time because my mom was adopted at birth, and so she only in the past few years, because of the ancestry websites, she was able to track down some blood relatives that she never knew before. And she has a half-sister in California named Elena. I was able to meet my aunt Elena for the first time. And she's such a sweet lady, and her family is beautiful and very welcoming and very loving. So it really felt great to like connect with new family that I never had before, and I found out that Elena is Jehovah's Witness by faith, and she goes to the Kingdom Hall every Sunday. So I actually decided to join her and to go to the Kingdom Hall with her and just check out what the Jehovah's Witness worship style is all about and what their culture and their community is like. So I just went for their Sunday service and I checked it out, and it was really something. It's different from other types of worship style that I have seen before. Not drastically different, but reasonably different. One thing I noticed is that the sermon and like the whole theme of the service that day was guided in their Watchtower magazine publication, that they publish nationally, probably internationally. And so we all read out of this pamphlet. Some of you guys might have seen this before because the Jehovah's Witness goes door to door. And I will note that whenever the Jehovah's Witness have knocked on my door, I've usually like kind of like shoot them away pretty quickly. Not necessarily because I didn't want like the light of Jesus, but just because I never really care for like people knocking on my door when they're unsolicited. Like maybe if it was a friend or something, just saying hi, that would be one thing, but it always just felt kind of like a sales pitch to like try to get me to join. And I know I never really responded well to that, but I have accepted their publication into the house a couple of times just to see what it has. And so anyway, yeah, Elena was like not pushy at all. She just told me that I'm welcome to join her if I wanted, and so since she's my aunt, I decided this time I will. And we read out of the Watchtower, and the theme was all about courtship, which I thought was very relevant to me. And it was interesting that that was such a synchronicity, that that was what it was all about that day, and that's what's been like on my mind. Something that occurred to me was like, I'm pretty sure, I gotta verify this, but I'm pretty sure since they have this Watchtower publication, it must be that every Kingdom Hall in different regions of the country, they must all be reading the same issue of the Watchtower every week. Um, and so that is interesting to me because it would mean that all Jehovah's Witnesses are all covering the same topic in synchronicity around the world or around the country. But I'm going to look into that and find out if that's true. But that is different, as far as I know, from other churches of different denominations. I was raised Catholic, and I never really even thought about like, what are we reading this week? Like in particular, what is this all about this week? Are other Catholic churches going over the same topics? It's not something I ever really thought about. But now I'm curious to find out if that is true. Something else I noticed about the worship style, and this will be kind of like my critique of the service, is that it was cool that they, even though there was like mostly like one person like speaking and like leading the sermon the whole time, they would talk and then they would invite the audience to chime in with like guided questions, and the questions were like right in the bottom of the page of the Watchtower, so we know what the questions are about to be. And the questions were basically just kind of like just confirming that we understood the material. So mostly the people would chime in and they would kind of like just repeat like a sentence from the paragraph that we just read. And that felt like really almost like being in school, like elementary school. We're just doing a reading and like, you know, and then we just like have to like summarize and just let the teacher know that we just understood what was just talked about. Some of the people would chime in with more insightful observations or like something that was coming to them more naturally rather than just like repeating the words. So that was cool, but yeah, it definitely felt like very carefully, almost rigidly guided. But everybody was very, very friendly in there, and I really didn't get much in the way of like weird looks, as I thought that there's always the chance you might walk into a church and like they're looking at you weird because they don't recognize you, and maybe they sometimes, a lot of people feel judged in different churches, and I know that that's a fact of life, because not everybody is walking the righteous path, even though they claim to be doing so. As followers of Christ, we are charged to be non-judgmental and leave judgment for God alone. But some Christians do judge people. And so, I did feel very, very warm interactions from everybody that was there. And they all love my Aunt Elena. And so, I kind of had her to like back me up and be like, this is my nephew. This is my nephew Flint. She was just so delighted that I was there. And everybody was so delighted to be there. And so, yeah, something that I've been kind of like wrapping my head around with Christianity in general is like there's the spiritual aspect of Christianity, and then there's the religious aspects, and there's also the cultural aspects. A lot of people go to church because they love the sense of community, and I think that's powerful and that's valuable. People need community in their lives. With community comes cultural views and perspectives, And, I think because of that, like there's different churches and different denominations where, you know, they all have their own interpretations of the Bible, and even individuals might have their own perspectives, but a lot of these denominations and churches, they 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 have their own culture where like they decide among themselves what is appropriate and permissible, and it might be different than other people that are reading the same Bible in a different part of the country. So that's interesting. But, you know, I've just been really appreciating seeing different styles. And I went to church with my friends in South Carolina, um, which is a non-denominational church. And my friends that I went with, they are part of the worship, the musical worship team. So they were like the band leaders, and the music was great. I really loved, the soul and the passion and the heart that they were putting into the music. Whereas the music at the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witness was a little bit lacking for me because there wasn't even like a live band at all. They just had a pre-recorded like track that we were singing to, and the lyrics are on the screen. And yeah, with no live music and us just singing over a track that just felt like a little hokey. But that's just me being honest. I'd much rather have all of us be humans, like live musicians, actual humans playing instruments, leading the songs. That would be preferred for me. The songs themselves were nice. And so yeah, I've been observing like different styles of worship, and I'm just happy when people are doing their best to love each other and give back to their communities and be of service and to do God's work. That's what gives me, joy. So yeah, the difference between religion and spirituality, that's something else that I've really been grappling with. I still consider myself to be more spiritual and less religious. I feel like that's kind of like a common thing that you hear people say. I'm spiritual but not religious. And it became such a common thing to hear that it started to sound like a little empty. Um, but that's still where I'm at, and that's why I, as I read the Bible and as I tune in with God, I want to make sure that I am making a spiritual connection and that I am doing all this for spiritual reasons, not because simply the religion dogma demands that I do so. Because, as far as I understand, religion is a creation of humans. And so, even though I think religion itself has value, um, which is, something that other people might disagree with, some people want to do away with religion completely. I still think that religion has value. However, I do not subscribe to the notion that I have to be strictly religious. I want to find spiritual value in all these practices. In other words, I don't want to follow a religion just for the sake of religion. If there's practices that I embody that are religious in nature, ultimately it's because I find the spiritual value of it. Case in point, abstinence. I'll keep talking about it because I want to hold myself accountable. And the reason that I want to continue on this path is because I can already see how my life has improved. Now I'm able to like engage with other people, even if I think they're beautiful, and even if I might be inclined to like have a crush. Now I'm able to I'm able to be more grounded in my interactions, because I know that there's not going to be like this desire to interact with them sexually. First, before that would ever happen, it would be like we're married, and before we get married, we have to figure out if we're supposed to get married. So there's like all these gates to pass through before sexual interactions are going to take place between me and another person. And so because of that, where I'm able to interact with people more groundedly, more in the light of love of God, and just in more wholesome ways altogether. So, yeah, that's where I'm at with spirituality versus religion. Yeah, so when I was in Pittsburgh doing the family time, the end of the Olympics was going on. It was like the last couple days of Olympic Games out in Paris, France, and I haven't seen much of the Olympic Games. I've seen some, but there's been like all this hubbub around the Olympics this year, and the opening ceremony. Um, and there's been like people of the Christian faith have been kind of up in arms around some of the proceedings. Like in particular, there was the opening ceremony. And so when I first saw the first bits of news, and mostly it was memes that were coming through, talking about the Olympic Games opening ceremony. It was, some people interpreted it as mocking the Last Supper, because it looked a little bit like the Last Supper painting by Da Vinci. And the ceremony included like a bunch of men in drag. Then it came around, and the Olympic Committee or whatever, made a public statement like, we're sorry if we offended anyone. Actually, supposedly the ceremony was actually inspired by some other painting, the Feast of the Gods. And it was supposed to be like a bacchanalia, like the feast of Bacchus. Which, so their take on that is that they are honoring the ancient Greek cultural traditions, since the Olympics started in ancient Greece. I still, the more that I look into it, the more that it all just kind of looks like a psyop. So now we're entering like the conspiracy portion of the podcast. And if you don't know, a psyop is a psychological operation designed by people in power to sway the opinion of the public, and to usually cause like confusion and deception and like cognitive dissonance, just to get people kind of like riled up, and to have people turning against each other, and just to basically control our minds and such. The reason why it looks like a psyop to me is because they have these two paintings, the Last Supper and the Feast of the Gods. The Last Supper is easily it's easily like a much more iconic piece of art that more people around the world are familiar with. The Feast of the Gods was painted like 100 or 200 years later, after the Last Supper, and is a lesser known piece of art. And the Feast of the Gods kind of looks like the Last Supper painting. So the fact that they are claiming to have been emulating the Feast of the Gods painting is an easy way to like that's an easy out. And I think that really it was intentionally meant to look like both of them, because the paintings are similar. And the other thing that I'm noticing was like that it was so quick that there was just memes all over the internet being passed around this ceremony. The first memes were, how dare the Olympics mock the Last Supper? And then right away, there's more memes. You silly, foolish Christians, you're so uncultured that you didn't even know this painting was not the Last Supper. Well, the ceremony wasn't supposed to be the Last Supper, according to these later memes that came out. And the memes that were coming out about that, they are now mocking the Christians, and their intention is to make the Christians look uninformed. And it's kind of just like, it's hard to say now because there's been so much hubbub. But like, if we were just to like say, like, just in a test, in a blind test, if we had 100 people and we showed just like not Christians, just 100 people of all different walks of life, and we were to show them like the image from the Olympic ceremony and ask them, what does this look like? I would be willing to bet that most of the people would think that it looked like the Last Supper, because most people have heard of the Last Supper painting and fewer people have seen or heard of this Feast of the Gods painting. But it was like a convenient avenue for the public to express disdain for Christians. So yeah, that's what it looks like for me, is that there's, basically some surreptitious and some shadowy people in power that want to kind of like beat down the Christians. Christians are always talking about spiritual warfare these days, and I think that this was a total clear case of spiritual warfare against Christians. That's what it looks like to me. So that's all I can say about that. I've made a lot of comments on people sharing the different memes, just trying to kind of like, be a medium to like kind of bring people back to respectful discussion, and not just like hating each other so much. And everybody knows, like, with Facebook, with social media, it's so easy to just automatically go into like argument and like hate mode. It's easy to happen, but I think that there are forces in the world that are fanning the flames intentionally, that are spreading memes around just to get people riled up and turn against each other. That's what it looks like to me. So I'm being very careful to like mention that I'm not just stating outright that that's what is going on. What I'm saying is that that's what it looks like to me. This is just my perspective and my opinions. And, I'm using this podcast as a place to ideally share love, but also to share my personal opinions and perspective on the world. And the good thing is, you are free to disagree with me. You can have your own view and perspective, and you can even drop a comment below the video, and you can let me know what you think about this. And I would love for you to do that. If you want to set me straight on something, chime right in, and I will respond in the most respectful way that I can, so that we can continue discourse around these topics. And also in the topic of gender norms, I've been carrying like a messenger bag these past few years, carrying my things around in like a messenger bag, and it became so tattered. And the bag that I was using was kind of like a unisex bag. It was just gray. It was long. It hung down a little too long for my liking, but I like using a bag rather than having stuff in my pockets, especially now that I have like a wallet that's fat, and I have a cell phone, I have keys. Even just having that amount of stuff in my pockets feels too bulky and bulgy in my pockets to walk around. So I started using a bag, but my bag was falling apart and was in tattered. in tatters. So I went to the thrift store in Mount Shasta and I was looking for a new bag. And the best option that I found was this delightful denim bag of sturdy construction. The straps are a little shorter than my old bag, which is kind of nice actually. Keeps it close to me. And when I found this, it really seemed like the best option for a bag to use. It has like many pockets, snap pockets, zip pockets. It has like a main compartment that I can zip up completely or leave open. Yeah, multiple pockets, very handy bag. But I was like so on the fence about buying this bag because of the flowers and it's this butterfly and it's kind of like a little bit girly. And I decided, you know what? This is a good bag. This is the best bag that's available. It was only like $2. I love doing thrift shopping because I can find good finds for like not that much money. And I decided to keep this bag and to use it for its function and still retain my masculinity while using a bag that is not conventionally designed or marketed for men to use. So there I am, dissolving gender norms in our current society and culture, because I'm just doing what is natural and what feels functional for me, and what serves my purpose, the purpose that was ordained to me by God. Here we are. So yeah, as far as the tour goes, I had a great time in Seattle with Red Light of Dawn and Carrie Courtney. They both played really beautiful sets, and we had a great turnout. It was really cool to play for Seattle's first kava bar. Nobody was drinking. Everybody was really attentive to the music, and the people running the bar, the kava bar, Swamp Cow Kava Lounge in Seattle. They are just so sweet and so wonderful. And I even used my set to like talk about Jesus, talk about the Bible, talk about churches, talk about God. And I sang a couple new songs that are, spiritually grounded in Christ. And they were well received, and even the venue like really, really supported that. That was really cool to see. That a place that is like a secular space, the people running the place are like supportive of like Christian values and virtues and like expressing faith in that way. Because it still feels kind of edgy to do so, to like express those things in secular spaces. And that's like, I've been telling people that I really feel like part of my purpose is to bridge the gap. 'Cause it feels like it can be easy for Christians to like isolate themselves and only surround themselves with other Christians. And if you're going to do that, like how are you ever going to connect to like other people and to like invite them, into walking a path of Christ? Yeah, I still love to flow in spaces regardless of, people's different faith. According to the Bible, we were all born sinners, and none of us are inherently innocent, but the love of Christ is what washes away sins and cleanses our souls. So, yeah, like I'm not here to judge other people for what they do that might be deemed a sin. I am just here to spread love. And I've connected with some Christian friends now, some old friends that are Christian. Reconnect with them, and I had some great conversations with them, just about like even about worldly music. they told me they don't shun worldly music, and I think that that's good because there's still value in music and lyrics that might not be like about Jesus, and they might still have value with virtues that align with Christ's teachings. And so I think that's still good. I think that the best art and the best music is inherently uplifting, and so is Jesus Christ. So if music is uplifting, even if it's not talking about Jesus, I think it's still good music. Yeah, that's what's been on my mind, and it was really great to like be able to include my mom and my stepdad in like part of my music tour. Um, usually like a music tour is something that a musician does on their own, and then a family vacation is like its own thing. And I know in the past that I've had family vacation experiences where I felt just kind of like a little like restricted and kind of like, unable to like really be myself a lot. Even if they want me to be able to be myself, when you're like stuck in a car with your parents for a long time and flying around and stuff and doing family stuff, sometimes it's just hard to like really be expressive in the way that you would feel authentically to do so in like other spaces. And I had a good balance of both of those on this trip. We had some family time. I met some of my parents' friends, and had some family dinners and stuff like that. And we went to parks. We saw the redwoods, yada yada. Went to the coast of Oregon. That was beautiful. And yet I had my musical performances too. And so I was able to weave my music career and my tour into like family life in some really beautiful ways. It's great to be like out here in a land that is unfamiliar to me, and to like also feel grounded in like family life for just a couple of weeks during that. And now my parents flew back out from Seattle. They're back in Fort Lauderdale already, Mom and Stanley. And I'm back on my solo road trip flow and having my freedom and my independence again. And this is cool. And in another month or so, I will be back in Florida. And I will be resuming my tour shortly after coming back to Florida. So yeah, my Florida trip is really just going to be part of the tour. And then I've got some more fall touring to go up to the Northeast. And I really can't wait to come back to the West Coast, because just even though I've been out here as much as I have, I really just want to come back and do it even more slowly and kind of explore more and ground into the beautiful land here and the cool environments and the communities that are thriving out here with creativity and open-minded folks. It really is just a whole different vibe out here on the West Coast. And I resonate with a lot of it. There's a lot of it that is a little too new agey for me. Like, the spiritual end of things out here, a lot of people just love to weave aspects of all spirituality. They want to think that all these different deities and gods and are all just hanging out and being friends. And like for me, I really only believe in Jesus. I'm not gonna like worship any other spiritual figure. I will worship God. I will look to Jesus as the Son of God, because that's what's been taught to me, and that's what resonates most deeply with me. So I sing my praises to Jesus, but I do not sing my praises to any other names of, Krishna or any other, like, that's just where I'm at. Like, I don't really believe in idolizing. And even when it comes to idolatry, something interesting from the Jehovah's Witness Elena mentioned how they don't have crosses up. They don't have like statues of Jesus for us to like bow down to. They see like the crucifix as like a form of idolatry. Crucifix is like, little tiny sculpture of like Jesus with a cross on it, Jesus on the cross. Like, so Jehovah's Witness don't believe in like worshiping those symbols, because to them that's idolizing Jesus, and even Jesus is not to be idolized. He is to be looked to as our savior, and to follow his teachings. So yeah, these are the spiritual topics that I'm navigating, and I'm really still hoping to bring some Christians onto the podcast to like have some open discussions about these kind of things. And yeah, I can see that happening pretty soon. But so far on the traveling, I've just barely had enough time in the day to just do the things that I even want to do. So finally, here I am sitting down all by myself to like just air my thoughts, using my own voice, and speak my own truth. And I do hope that some of this might resonate with you. And once again, let me know in the comments what you think about all this. Sending love, sending blessings, wishing you the best on your path. And if you feel called, keep me in your prayers. And if you want to be kept in my prayers, you can let me know that about that too in the comments. If there's something that is on your mind, in your heart, something in your life that you need prayer for, we can pray for you. Once again, much love. God bless. I want to let you know where I'm at on the road. I've got a few weeks of wiggle room, and my next date is September 18th. I'm performing Ecstatic Dance at Mandala Springs in Barnardsville, North Carolina, which is outside of Asheville. And I'm still hoping to fill in some dates in between. But like I said, I have some wiggle room. Then on Friday, September 20th, I'm playing Ecstatic Dance in Wabasso, Florida, which is near Sebastian. And that's with my good friend SoFlo Yoga. Can't wait to see Sophia again. We have collaborated on ecstatic dances many times. Following that, I'm playing a wedding in October 19th in Connecticut. And after that, I'm playing solo again at Twisted Roots, November 9th in Hollywood, Florida. So keep an eye on the tour schedule at flintblade.net/tour, and you will see all the updates of the new dates that I add as they're added.